When I went on to my journey of trying to achieve fire, it was more about, having a better balance of life and work in something that I would say I enjoy. Being able to buy my freedom, use my money to buy freedom. So money is being used as a tool. It's not something, honestly, I seek. It is something I want to use in order to have more time where I can do the things I would enjoy.
You don't have to wait until you reach financial independence to start enjoying your life. You can do that much earlier and start living a life that you love and that's true to you. Welcome to Freedom Before Fire. Using fire and life design techniques, we help you create freedom on your way to fire instead of waiting until you're retired to do the things that light you up. I'm your host Greg, a fire movement and life design enthusiast. If you're itching to get freedom now, then let's do this. Hello and welcome back to another episode, and I hope you're having a great week so far. So I had the awesome opportunity to speak with Steve Cummings, an American world traveler, a family man and a digital nomad who runs the blog The Frugal Expat. So Steve accelerated his path to FI when he moved to Taiwan in 2017 by using Geoarbitrage and working as an expat English teacher with his partner. They recently moved to Melbourne, Australia, where he is now enjoying life as a father and running his online business full time. So some of the nuggets you'll learn today include how travel hacking got Steve into fire, why he quit his job in US and moved to Taiwan, how he was able to save 60% of his income, working only 32 hours a week there. He also talks about how meeting his partner made him even more frugal. Steve also talks about his simple investment strategy, his current progress, and his fire number. He then talks about his transition, moving to Australia after 6.5 years in Taiwan. Also, he talks about his second career change to full-time content creator, again, only working part-time hours. And then he talks about how he found purpose and meaning throughout his journey, and the freedoms he has unlocked by pursuing FI. So without further ado, let's get into this one. All right, so welcome to the show, Steve. Glad we managed to get you on. How are you?
I am doing good. It's a sunny day, so it makes me happy.
Well, the reason why I wanted to get Steve on, the reason I wanted to get you on, Steve, is because I think it was during probably around the pandemic or after the pandemic, I was doing a lot of listening to podcasts and like reading blogs. And I came across your blog, The Frugal Expat. And we had very similar stories as one of the things at first that I was drawn to, and very similar kind of investing strategies. So I thought I really wanted to get in touch. So so happy that we're on the show and we're able to do more of a deep dive into your background and your story. So Steve, can you just give a really quick introduction, just really brief introduction on yourself and where in the world are you at the moment?
Yeah, thanks, Greg, for having me on here. I think a little bit about me is, I would say late 30s, kind of. I'm a family man. I've got a wife. I've got a 20-month-old daughter, and right now I am living in Melbourne, Australia, which I probably didn't think about that maybe 7-8 years ago. 7-8 years ago, I left the USA. I moved to Taiwan to save some money, travel some more, and see where life would take me. And in the process, I met my wife. I visited over 30 plus countries. I enjoyed the outdoors, did camping, did adventure things. I mean, there's just so much of life I experienced in the last 6 or 7 years that I never really actually thought about when I was sitting at a desk in the States. And so right now, I'm still working on achieving fire, but it's much closer than it was. And I am working for myself. I'm an entrepreneur. I run my own website. I create content for other websites. And right now, I'm working from home and enjoying life with my family.
Sounds amazing. And when you say you're kind of working from home, just to get an idea, how many hours are you putting in a week?
That is a good question. I would say, maybe a couple of days a week. I'm doing maybe seven hours. A couple of days, I'm doing maybe 5 hours. So maybe anywhere between 20 to 30 hours a week. The other time, I'm watching my daughter. So my mother-in-law is watching my daughter maybe 2 afternoons a week and 2 or 3 afternoons a week. And I'm watching her in the early mornings and the other afternoons of the week. So usually Tuesday and Friday afternoons, it's me and my daughter time. And so kind of take off work and enjoy life.
That sounds amazing. And if you're around the 20, 30 hour work week mark, that's kind of like pretty much part-time if you compare it to like the corporate life, isn't it? So you're kind of living the dream over there, Steve.
Well, yeah, I wish I had more time. I mean, to put towards my business, then I could probably make a little bit more money. But for right now, I mean, the time is good because I can spend it with my daughter, and that's one of the lucky things that I get because many people they put their kids into daycare, and I get to have one-on-one time. I get to teach her words. I get to play outside when it's sunny and make breakfast every morning. And, that's valuable time that I won't be able to see once she gets older.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose being in that fire journey, did that help? Did that help to get to where you are?
I think so. I think just focusing on fire probably in my years when I was working in Taiwan kind of helped give me a cushion where, right now I know that if I didn't invest another dollar in about 15 years time, I would have $1 million. And that's just with compounding interest, just keep on going. And that's one of the greatest things about investing early and getting that snowball rolling is when you get to a point where you don't need to invest anymore, you can find other avenues to make income. You can create other opportunities to live life, and it makes life just so much better. I mean, sitting in the rat race, going day after day after day, trying to make ends meet can be stressful. It can be it can make all those grays and whites come out in your hair. I mean, I have a little bit of whites, but I always say it's just the stress of having a kid running around. But but I mean, the money stress is not there. I mean, as it would have been if I was still living in the States, always stressing about money. But right now, I just have a nice little cushion, I would say.
Yeah, nice, good stuff. And if you don't mind sharing, are you okay to share generally like your fire number is, that your fire plans are at the moment, and then what your future plans are? Yeah,
I don't mind. Right now, my wife and I have plans to probably to work. I mean, I am not sure what's going to happen the next 15, 20, 30 years. I mean, where I am now is not where I expected to be about 10 years ago. And so our fire right now is, my hope is to kind of retire my wife, which she would love just to be like a stay-at-home mom. And so we are working towards, our goal is to work towards like $1 million. That gives us, $1 million US. Right now I'm living in Australia, and so $1 million US is about 1.5 million Australian dollars, which is a good bit of money here in Australia. And even though, they have lots of things are more expensive here, but still that's just a good amount of money that we're trying to work towards. I know that it will then just keep snowballing over the years. And so we're trying to work on that. Right now, our net worth is about 320,000 USD, and it is continuing to grow as we work towards it, and as the market goes up and down, and our portfolio has gone up and down the last couple of weeks. But I mean, that's just a part of market volatility, and which is we just keep investing. And so those are the plans for right now. And if we retire, it happens. If not, I mean, we'll just keep on going on this journey. Because before this, I was in the States. I was working in an office building, working for a physical therapy department, doing phone calls, scheduling, doing kind of admin work. And then I went off to Taiwan to be a teacher and saved a ton of money doing that. And then working on this own business, this blog has created me another avenue of income, and to the point where I was making more doing this than doing teaching. So obviously I just quit the teaching and went to the larger revenue stream.
Awesome. So we'll probably dive in more into that a bit later. But I suppose one thing I wanted to kind of get the listeners to understand is like your background, and you kind of touched on it a little bit there. And one of the things that I think about is people on their FI journeys. One of the ways that they could kind of find or unlock types of freedom is, take risks to make big leaps. Maybe it's a career change. Maybe it's to travel abroad, just to do a leap. And I know you kind of, as you mentioned, you kind of done that throughout your journey. So could you just take us back as far as you'd like to? What shaped your kind of money mindset? What were your influences? Can you touch on that?
Yeah, of course. I would say it started in 2016. I was 29 years old, and I had just started a new job. I was working at a physical therapy department where I had promises of being able to rise up in the company and get into more marketing and be able to create more sales within the company. Well, after about 3 months, I figured everything they told me was quite a bit of a lie. And they enjoyed me on the telephones, but they didn't really want to advance me on. They're like, "Oh, you gotta be able to open mail." And I was like, "What?" That's like I'm downplaying some of my many skills that I had. And so at that point, I also realized that maybe this 9 to 5 grind is just burning me out. And so I had all this free time because I finished my work within 2 hours. And so I had to work an 8-hour day at a desk where I did all my work pretty quickly. And so I just started reading about travel online. And I was like, wow, I could do this. I could go out and see the world. And, it's quite cheap. And people, in our mindset, we think traveling is expensive. It's got to be, flights are expensive, places to stay are expensive, many locations around the world are expensive, but truly, many locations around the world are quite cheap compared to where you're living if you're in the Western world. In the US, maybe Canada, or even Australia, you think traveling is expensive. And so when I was getting into that, I got into credit card points, and then it got me down into a rabbit hole of all these financial retire early things. I was like, oh, I could do this. All I need to do is, save and invest, and then I could go from place to place to place. And so I got thinking, all right, how can I do this? And there were people that were going out to maybe South Korea, China, Vietnam, and they would save 10, 15, possibly $20,000. I say possibly, but usually $10,000 to $15,000 a year just by living these places. And then I was like, wow, this could be me. And then I could take this, invest it, and then go travel. So I made a plan, and by age 30, I was on my way. I had bought a ticket in July of 2017 to fly to Taiwan to become an English teacher. And when I moved there, I started making about $2,000 a month, which doesn't sound like much, but my cost of living was anywhere between maybe $700, $800 to $1,000 a month. So I'm saving about half of it I had some student loans, so I was paying some of those off at the same time. So I was still saving quite a bit of money. I met my wife in the process, and together, before we got married, I paid off all my student loans, which was $8,000. And I got married in 2019, and then we started to aggressively save for our future. And in the process, we were saving and putting away about $30,000 a year into some simple index funds, and that's what started changing my life, was just being able to save. And I started reading a couple books. I started following Mr. Money Mustache. Mm-hmm. He's a famous blogger who did the same thing. I started following Go Curry Cracker. I met up with Jeremy from Go Curry Cracker in Taipei. I just sent him an email, and we had some coffee twice, which was awesome. Like, he opened my mind to so much more. I started following a couple FI people. There's the Financial Imagineer. That guy, his name is Matt. I've met up with him. He's a Swiss retired guy. He retired at, I think, 37 or 40, something like that. And I started reading, The Simple Path to Wealth, The Psychology of Money. I started reading The Millionaire Next Door. I mean, all these books were saying similar things. I was like, this is got to be it. And so I just started living it, and then I started writing about it and telling people about this stuff, because I felt I had many friends that were on the same kind of path of life. They were struggling, but they didn't know what to do. And so I was like, all right, this is how you guys invest. And then my wife's like, Steve, why don't you write about it? And so that's how the Frugal Expat came about. I could document personal finance articles with travel articles on how to travel frugally and also be able to save at the same time. And so my life got basically turned upside down at the age of 29, when I had this wealth of knowledge coming into my head that I had to make a change.
Wow. Yeah. Again, so
this is sorry, that was like a long spiel.
That was an amazing spiel. And this is what I meant when our stories are very similar, because I was from living in London, UK. Then I moved to Philippines 2018, and kind of like accidentally bumped into Geoarbitrage and doing similar things what you're saying about, being able to save more because you're in a low cost of living country, and then kind of like helping that to accelerate. So just going back to your story about the Geoarbitrage and lower costs, and can I just get an understanding of what your salary was back in US? Were you saving much of it then? And then the difference to the numbers in Taiwan from US?
Yeah, when I was in the US, I had a couple of different jobs, and it seemed like I could never get ahead salary wise. It was usually sitting in probably around the mid 30,000s, and I figured, and I kept trying to move up the ladder, but it just never really accounted for more. And so I knew when I went to move to a different country that my salary would be probably not cut in half, but probably cut a third or a fourth. And I was probably saving maybe $1,000 a month while in the US. And I was working a 9-to-5 job. Then on nights and on weekends, I was a soccer referee. And so I would probably make work 3 to 4 nights a week doing soccer refereeing. And it was about maybe $100 a night. Now on the weekend, I could probably make anywhere between $100 to $300 on a weekend, depending on if there was a soccer tournament or just a couple games I may pick up. And so that's that. And then also in the process, I was also doing some house sitting and dog sitting. So maybe I was doing all three at the same time, but still I wasn't saving enough. It just felt like I was hustling but I just couldn't make ends meet. Well, I mean,
What was the savings rate roughly at that time? Just roughly. I know it was a long time ago,
I would
but
say probably 25%.
Mhm.
Which, I mean, it's not bad. But I wanted to do more. I wanted to, I always felt I wasn't doing enough. If that makes sense. I mean, it
Mhm.
just felt like I was just like swimming, but not swimming hard enough and not being able to keep my head above water. And it just kept feeling like I was being dragged down by maybe my student loan debt and maybe just the cost of everything. Driving a car, I mean, always had to be putting in gasoline or being able to do maintenance, and the cost just kept coming in. It just felt like I needed some way to create more income and save more. Um, and
Yeah. And then,
when I
sorry.
decided to live in Taiwan, or I even thought about South Korea, it was the fact that I could save. All right, I can save maybe $15,000-$20,000, but in the process, I could enjoy life on the side. Like this was just the job and not having to side hustle the entire time. I can enjoy life. I could see other countries. I could go out hiking every weekend. I could maybe go out to eat instead of like, just living all the frugal things I could, like on rice and beans.
But how did you find out about that life? I'm talking about the lifestyle in Taiwan. Was there someone that was doing something similar, or you just heard it on a podcast, or you read about it?
Honestly, I was thinking about working in South Korea. But then I had a friend who came back from Taiwan and said, "Hey, you should live in Taiwan. It's great." And no one thinks about it. And I'm like, and first thing I do is I went on to Google. I was like, oh, this country has got similar to weather of Florida. I mean, it's hot, sunny, humid. They've got tropical fruits. It's very close to many places. And I was like, oh, and it sounded less stressful than working in Korea. I read some stories that, Korean teachers are a little stressed out. And I was like, Taiwan seemed a little bit more laid back. I was like, oh, I could do this for a year. And so I made the choice. Let's go see what happens. And if all else fails, well, I could find another country to live in.
Oh, amazing. And then can you just touch on your savings rate then? So it said 20-25% back in US. And in Taiwan, can you remind me what that was?
I was saving about probably 55%. And before 2023, it was getting closer to 65%. And 2023 is probably about 60% of our income. Maybe a little bit more towards the end of 2023, but around 60%.
Wow, that's the power of Geoarbitrage. And you obviously found a really good job as well. Is there quite a lot of competition for a job? Like, can anyone in US be like, oh, yeah, I could teach English? It's like, if someone's thinking about it, if they listen to this thinking, how possible actually is that, Steve? Were you like, were you a rare case? Or?
I think it's a little bit easier than people think. If you have, let's say you have a university degree, that's one thing. You can get a TEFL certification through. There's a couple online schools or even in-person schools. You can get TEFL, which is teaching English as a foreign language. You can get that certification that helps you more getting inside the door. And then if you have a teaching license, that will get you almost any job. I say almost any job. There's probably some more international schools you cannot get. But if you want a way to get around that, you can go to the state of Illinois. They give you out some substitute licenses, and it costs $50, and you can have a 5-year substitute license, and that can get you in a lot of doors. So what I did was I became a substitute license in Chicago. I had lived in Chicago for 1 month getting my TEFL certification. And then I get into public schools over in Taiwan. And one of the schools I got into, my wife was working at it. This was a English camp style school. So kids would come in for like a camp for about 3 days. We would teach English in fun, different ways. Like I was teaching about 1 year, I did it about soccer. And next year we did, I did theme parks, and we would actually kind of build roller coasters. And we would also play games. And after those 3 days, we would have 2 days off. So I was working 3 days a week, getting paid like a full-time salary. It was like I was a nurse. I worked 36
insane.
hours and then I would be off. And sometimes I would have 6 days that would come together that would have straight off. And then my wife would like, all right, let's go travel. Let's go, let's jump on a plane and go see someplace.
Yeah, exactly. Because being in Taiwan is like quite central to all the other holiday destinations like Thailand, obviously Philippines and Cambodia. And yes, I'm sure you managed to get around those places as well. I know you mentioned there was times when you worked less hours, but on average, how many hours were you working a week there in Taiwan?
I would say on average, probably 32 hours. It just, that's pretty good. For the most part, we were working about 32 hours a week. I think post-COVID, we went up to 40 hours. And then we started coming back down because we started doing our camps again. So, yeah.
That's amazing. Again, those hours are really good. Like if you want to like do things on the side. And I suppose that kind of helped you doing things on the side, did it? Like doing your side
Yeah, exactly. We would work basically intensively 2 12-hour days and then an 8-hour day afterwards. And then we would have just free time. And if it's raining, you can't go out to do much. So I had time to get on my computer, start writing, start reading, and then just made a nice little routine about it and just got it going.
Could you share any challenges, any low points along your journey throughout this since you left US and went to Taiwan? You live in there for years. Can you touch on any sort of low points or any challenges?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges was because if it's me by myself, I have my mindset of what I want to achieve and my goals. And then when I got married, I think a challenge was, and my wife, she is quite frugal. She loves to save and she is great at it. The challenge was also scoping her mindset to not just putting our money in the bank where probably didn't, at that point, interest rates were quite low and you really couldn't earn much, to the point where, let's invest and let's get this money growing for us. And it's like when she turned that switch, it was like, wow, let's just put all of our money into it. And then at that point, I was like, well, we need to also budget money for other things. And then I think it was in 21 or 2022, we were in the process of trying to have our first child, but we were having some fertility issues. And I think a challenge was, all right, instead of like investing all of our money, now let's move some of that money into fertility treatments. And so we would maybe not invest as much as we were, but we were investing more into our family instead of into our portfolio. But I think choices like that is good choices, but everybody has a choice with the way they want to use their money. Like my way of doing things is not the same as your way, Greg, or the same as everybody else. Everybody
Absolutely.
has different mindsets. And you learn about that if you read a couple books. Like The Psychology of Money talks about the way each individual is shaped by their family, their culture, the way they grew up with money. And so that can also be a challenge if you are clashing with other people or other cultures. Like sometimes I clash with my in-laws about the way they think about money. They don't like investing. They like to put money in the bank or to buy property or something like that. But that's just different worlds and different people.
Yeah, I agree, because personal finance is personal, as it says on the tin, everyone has their own scenarios, backgrounds. Some of the principles, of investing and saving can be applied generally, but again, everyone has their own circumstances, and as you mentioned, cultures. Just really quickly you mentioned cultures. I just wanted to touch on that a bit, just for people listening into this, and because you mentioned that your in-laws. Can you just touch on like where they're from and the cultural differences in terms of like money and mindsets and stuff like that?
Yeah. So my in-laws, they immigrated to Australia from Hong Kong. I think it was in the late 70s, and so they have I would say it's an Asian mindset of wanting to buy property, and which I mean I've got an Australian friend. He's got a Taiwanese wife, and he said my in-laws, they pressured us into buying property, and so my in-laws, they talk about we have money to help you guys buy your first property, and I think it's a good thing because they very concerned about their children and wanting to be able to have houses for their children. And sometimes, in Australia, like the prices are going so crazy high, and people have fears that maybe the next generation won't be able to have their property. And so that is something that I have learned. My dad, he invests in stocks, and he's got some rentals, but he's over years he is just continuing to slowly create a bigger portfolio. And my in-laws, on the other hand, they don't have portfolio. They have cash, and but that's just a little bit of a different. They do love to save money. They have a very frugal mindset on being able to save money, which is great because I like to save money too.
Just touching on more on the family side, and they do say like, in the financial world, or generally in the financial world, like one of the key levers is actually choosing your life partner. And obviously you're married, you have your kids. What's your wife's kind of mindset around money and behaviors? And can you talk us through like, what was it like when you guys first met and until now? Like, what was your both of your behaviors and mindsets about money and saving?
Well, one thing I think I like about my wife is she taught me how to save better, or even more. When I first met her, I was using the public transportation to get everywhere, the train, the metro, anywhere to get everywhere. And my wife introduced me to something called a bicycle. I mean, it's
those things.
It's an interesting thing because we all grew up learning how to ride a bike, and then all of a sudden we go from bicycle to you get your car. But she rode her bicycle everywhere, and she's like, "This is how I save money. I don't spend money on getting on the metro or buses. If it's raining, I'm biking." And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then I got myself a bike, and then I upgraded to a better bike. So then I have a very good, situation where my back doesn't hurt and my feet don't hurt. It makes it even better. And then we started biking everywhere, and we saved so much money because we biked everywhere. We didn't need a car. We could jump on a bus if it's raining, but we biked everywhere. Another thing was, she had housemates, and learned how to save money through our school. Our school would have all this leftover food that they would give kids, and they would have to toss it out. So we would bring food containers to our school, and we would fill them with leftover foods. And so at nighttime, we would have leftovers. So we were saving on food, we were saving on transportation. And then next, we were trying to save on rent by finding a good place that cost that didn't cost us much, because we had a choice. We could spend like $1,000 to $2,000 on a place. We had two incomes coming together, but instead we found a good place that was still cheap. And so we were knocking out transportation, housing, and food. and we were saving. I mean, I think we were spending maybe $800-900 a month on two incomes. I mean, it was pretty amazing. I was like, man, this is good. We can save
cheat code.
Because my wife loves saving to go travel more. That was her goal. Her goal was like, all right, all I need is 5,000 USD to go travel all of August. And I was thinking, we can do that and invest.
That's it. That's so funny. Yeah, she's very mustachian, especially with the bike thing, isn't it? He loves cycling around everywhere. And actually, me and my wife were talking about getting bikes and stuff. But here in around Manila, in Philippines, the roads are not. Let's just say they're not very bicycle friendly. So we're a little bit worried about that. So with like health, being alive, saving money. So yeah,
those
so
are
it's something
always
we
the things
have
you have to think about.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned that about like your wife being frugal, because I actually mentioned it during when we got married, when we were doing our vows and things like that. Because my wife, when we first met, it was funny when we went our first date. In my mind, I was like, I had these things planned out. Like, okay, I was going to take her here to this nice place, and start here, this nice place. And then when we met, we ended up just going to like this nice like park on a bench, and we just got in Philippines we have this bread. It's called pandesal. Very simple, like bread rolls, but quite sweet. So we just got some of that. We just got some bottles of water. I was like, interesting. Like, this is cool. We didn't end up going to anywhere fancy, and we were just like having a chat on this like bench under a shade and in this like nice park in the middle of Manila. So yeah,
that sounds like my first date too. Like I said to my wife, I said, let's go to this pub, which is near where my work was, and let's grab a beer. And she's like, oh, why do that? Let's just how about you grab a beer from 7-Eleven? I'll grab one, and we'll meet up in this place called Chiang Kai-shek Memorial in Taipei. And then she brought some cookies, and we sat and talked for like an hour or an hour and a half. And then she got on her bike and she rode away. And I was like, wow, that was a pretty cheap date. I was like, oh.
That's so funny. Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Okay. So going back to kind of like the FIRE and your financial independence journey, just to give listeners an idea more about your actual strategy and what you invest in and things like that. Can you just give more details about your current strategy? How exactly are you investing? But yeah, just your general FIRE strategy at the moment.
So right now our strategy is to buy some simple index funds, and which is basically I'm buying VTI, which is the Vanguard Total Market Index Fund ETF. If you read any sort of like simple finance books like The Simple Path to Wealth or even The Psychology of Money or many of those, they talk about simple index funds. Mm-hmm. And I put about maybe 90% of my money into VTI. And right now I'm just letting it roll, just continuing every month to put in maybe 20-25% of our income into that. And on the side, we are also saving 10 or 15% for a house down payment. My in-laws are giving us money, but we're also saving for a house down payment right now. While we were in Taiwan, I think we were doing the first half of the year. We had more tax taken out of our income. They do that just in case you may leave. So they will tax you 18% for the first 6 months, but once you stay in Taiwan for over 6 months, the tax will go down to about 5% or 12%, depending if you make a lot of money. It's a marginal tax rate. And so we would, for about 3 or 4 months, we would save. And then what we would do is we would just send about $9,000 to my American accounts. And then I would just lump sum into VTI. And we would do that throughout the year. Around fall time, we would do a little bit more. And so every year we would probably be investing about maybe 30 to 35,000 USD a year to kind of start getting that portfolio to about 100,000. I think Charlie Munger said the first 100,000 is a bitch, so you got to do it any way you can. And once we hit that, I was like, yes, we're rolling. And right now we are putting money in, and we are saving on the side for a down payment of a house.
Talking about similarities, I have very, very similar investment strategy, VTI. And when you were in Taiwan, because me being an expat in Philippines, I had to use an international broker. Do you have a direct account with Vanguard back in US and you just kind of move your money to your account in US? Or do you have an international broker you had an account with in Taiwan? Or how did that work?
Yeah, so I've got an account with Vanguard. I've got an account with Fidelity, and also M1 Finance. I really don't use my Fidelity. I mean, I could switch it over, but right now all my money is basically in Vanguard. And so what I would do is I would turn on my VPN, so then it looks like I'm making transfers in the US, and then I would buy some stocks. Yeah, I do that now. I mean, I just turn on the VPN and then just go ahead and.
Nice. And then just in terms of like, you mentioned a lot of resources that I was kind of looking into as well before. Was there any particular FIRE books, blogs, podcasts that kind of really pushed it for you and got you into it?
Yeah, I started reading Mr. Money Mustache, and I was reading Go Curry Cracker for a good bit of time. And one of the books I got into was The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. And it was, I mean, it's basically his website put into a book. And and I still go back when I have questions about things or like questions in my mind, like, am I doing the right thing? I go back to read it and I'm like, oh, J.L. Collins, this is like, is kind of like a Bible for those looking for a good personal finance. I mean, it's simple. It makes things abundantly clear. It tells you about like FU money. It tells you about, when markets are bad, well, just keep investing, keep buying and holding. And it makes sense. When markets are bad, you buy and hold. 2022, I was buying and holding, and the market was down 19%. And then in 2023, the market's up, I think 23, 24%. Right now, the market's up like 10%, 10, 11%. And, if you just keep buying and holding, I mean, it's going to go up. Now, I can't always say that because you say past returns doesn't mean future returns. But if you just keep it simple, I mean, the snowball is going to keep rolling and keep growing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's definitely like up there in terms of the resources and blogs that got me into it, especially on the investing side, because when I was looking at kind of like Facebook groups and Reddits and things like that, they talk a lot about like, oh, we're investing in like 3 or 4 different things and then we stock pick a little bit. And I was like, wow, surely like people know about like J.L. Collins and, just one and done type thing, and you don't have to rebalance every year. And but again, as we touched on earlier, each to their own, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And he just makes it simple. I watch sometimes Rob Berger on YouTube, and he says the same thing. I mean, he wrote the book Retire Before Mom and Dad. I think that's the book he wrote, and he's got some things that are consistent with what Rick Ferry. Rick Ferry says similar things. He's got his 4 core portfolio. I mean, you got all these guys. They say the same thing, so it's got to be. You got to go with it. Don't make it too hard. Don't make it difficult. Just keep it simple. And what's the worst that can happen? The U.S. blows up. Well, then we'll have other issues that we need to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Just wanted to change a little bit on topic and go back to, because you did go through a career change from US to Taiwan. And I think you've made another career change from Taiwan to where you're at now, talking about being an English teacher back in Taiwan to, I think you mentioned on our chats before, you're full-time in the digital nomad space. Can you take us through that journey, that sort of next chapter in Steve's life from Taiwan to moving to Australia as a digital nomad? Can you just talk us through that journey?
Yeah. It was I started my website in July of 2020. I mean, we were at the height of COVID. I wasn't going to be traveling anytime soon. But at that time, I was already I was doing some personal finance classes with many people around the Taipei area, and my wife wanted. It's like, you should just write some of this stuff down. So I started writing it down, and in the spring of 2021, I found a great mastermind group. They're called the Money Mix, and I started to do some writing for them, and I was writing for myself and learning the ropes of how to be an online creator and a journalist. And at that time, I just started making some great contacts, and my website wasn't making too much money. It was just up and down. And about 2023, I had created an avenue where I could make some substantial money. And around May of 2023, I had our new boss, our current boss was updating our contracts with English teaching. So it was a choice of signing on for another year or going on my own journey, where I wasn't tied to teaching English, and I would potentially taking a huge risk and kind of leaving my job and then taking on a new adventure and just digital nomad, just working on my own website and making money from there. And so my wife and I, we discussed it. And at that time, she was making enough money where, we could live on half of her income and still have some left over, which was great. And at that time, we hadn't chosen to leave Australia. I had put in applications to get a partner visa in Australia, but it could take up to 36 months. That's a 3-year process. So, 3 years. And in the process, I could have fallen back to English teaching if I wasn't making money. So I took a risk. And at that time, I made the choice, and I quit my contract ended July 31st. And so I quit my job, and then I went full-time being digital nomad and, part-time digital nomad, part-time stay-at-home dad. And for the next basically 6 months, I was working just from my computer, and I was making a great bit of more money. And in the process, as you're running a business, things fall through, things get connected, and I was making connections of other people. And right now, I'm living in Australia, so I moved December 15th from Taiwan to Australia, got my visa, and I made other connections with, I create content for 2 other different websites besides my own, and seeing where things go. Like I said, businesses, they go up and down, and with Google algorithms, it can be hard, it can be easy, things just keep moving. And so that's how I've gone from teaching English to now full-time. I'm working from my computer and taking care of my daughter on the side.
Amazing. And that your main website is obviously the Frugal Expat. Is that right?
That is correct. It's frugalexpat.com, and we have a lot more travel content on there, but we still create content about personal finance. And I've got a team behind me that is helping write content, edit content, and we're just continuing to create to help anyone out there that is looking for content about personal finance and cheaper travel and maybe even cheap retirement locations.
What are your kind of most popular type of post or topic?
That's a good question. We have Some of the most popular ones are right now, like finding some better jobs out there. I mean, obviously, I have some great frugal tips that, like, we have some frugal date tips, frugal tips around the house, and even just frugal living tips, like even like cutting your own hair or riding a bike someplace. And I also have about great places to go retire. There are so many great places around the world that are so cheap to live and retire, even where you live in the Philippines, much cheaper than it is living in either here in Australia, living in the USA where it was. You can go to Europe. Portugal has some great expat visas. If you have enough income coming in, you can buy a house in Italy and France that are cheaper than you can buy a house in your local neighborhood in the US or in London or here in Australia. And you can then travel. You can enjoy Mediterranean life. There are just so many places around the world. And these are some topics that are really people are looking into. And it's that expat life, being able to use Geoarbitrage to live a better standard of living, but it costs cheaper. That's one of the things I was looking into is how can I live a better life while making enough money or just using less money. And so I still write about those things.
Oh, amazing. So you've got your own business and then your own website, and then you also, would you call that freelancing with other websites, or how would you
I would say I've got freelancing with other websites. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so that sounds really cool. And obviously at the beginning of the show you talked about you're currently putting in roughly around 20-30 hours a week at the moment.
Yeah, I think some weeks if I can get my mother-in-law to watch my daughter a little bit more, I can put in a little bit more work. And sometimes my mother-in-law was out to Sydney to visit her mom, who is quite old, and her relatives. And so then it's like full-time dad in the afternoon when my wife can't watch my daughter. And then it's like, all right, let's see how much work I could get in between 9:30 and about maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon, plus having a lunch and just going.
Amazing. So Steve, we talked quite a bit about like your background, your journey, your transitions, and your financial journey. I wanted to touch on kind of purpose, meaning, that kind of side of things, because obviously we can get bogged down into the money side, the financial side. Can you talk to us about meaning for you and purpose? Are you kind of on that track? Is that something that you've found? Can you just share a bit about that, please, Steve?
Yeah. When I went on to my journey of trying to achieve FIRE, it was more about, having a better balance of life and work in something that I would say I enjoy. Being able to, I would say, buy my freedom, use my money to buy freedom. So money is being used as a tool. It's not something, honestly, I seek. It is something I want to use in order to have more time where I can do the things I would enjoy. Like when I was working 3 days a week, we'd be out in the mountains hiking on those other days, or in the rivers, like tracing up a river, or maybe in a different country, just enjoy more about life. And, work wasn't a pain. I mean, I enjoyed teaching. I enjoyed creating value in children's lives. That was a joy. It was like, all right, sometimes people go to work and they feel burned out, like, oh, it's Monday. I have to get in my car, go do this, go do that. And right now, when I work for myself, my goal right now is to create value for the readers. Maybe it's something they didn't think about. Maybe it's a way they could enjoy saving money that they didn't think, I don't really have much hair. I can save money on haircuts. I could just have my wife cut it or something. Or maybe I could just get out my bike and enjoy the free air. Like, I don't even have a car. My wife has a car. We have a car together, but it's just one car. And so right now I have a bicycle. And so if I want to go out, I either get on a bicycle or I walk to places. And, just having that freedom to, enjoy life, that is my purpose. That's honestly my wife's purpose too, is having that freedom of time. Instead of being strapped down and having to always go to work and creating value in people's lives. That's why I write content, is I want to create just good value. Yeah.
Nice. Well said. Yeah, because one of the main concept of this podcast is trying to find or unlock freedom on your way to FIRE. So as you mentioned there, so you kind of touched on it as well. Was there anything else in terms of unlocking freedom? Was there anything else or any ways that you've managed to unlock elements of freedom on your journey?
Well, I think freedom to travel, I think, has really opened up. Many people think travel is expensive. And, I can see that too. I was talking with my neighbor yesterday and she says, oh, travel in Australia is so expensive. It's cheaper to fly to Thailand or Japan. And I'm thinking, you're right. It's one thing I've been using is I have been collecting credit card points. And one thing in the US that I found, you can do it here in Australia and probably you can do it in the UK, is sometimes credit cards give you, a percentage back. Maybe it's 2%, 3%, maybe sometimes even 5 or 10%, depending on the category. And I've been using some of those points and some of those cash back to fly to places. For my wedding, I flew from Taiwan to Melbourne, Australia, using credit card points, which I flew on Singapore Air. And I was like, wow, it just cost me maybe $40 in taxes. And I got a free flight basically free all the way to Australia. And then I used a flight to go from here to there. And I think having that freedom, using, I guess, my wits and using other people's money can help leverage achieving other dreams and seeing other things.
Nice. Before we wrap up, I'd like to get us into a quick fire question round, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I've got 5 or 6 questions here. The first one, I think you kind of touched on it, but just to kind of clarify it, I'll ask it anyway. So 6 questions, quick fire round. Just keep your answers brief and we'll just fly through it really quickly, Steve. So the first question, what is your definition of freedom?
I think freedom is being able to control your time and be able to have nothing that restricts you in any way.
Good. And then question number 2, what's something you wish you'd done 10 years ago?
Oh, 10 years ago, I wish I would have started investing. I mean, that would have made my journey so much quicker.
Yep. Question number 3, what are 1 or 2 daily habits that have helped you in your life, Steve?
I think one daily habit is every morning I try to read something new. I've got a couple books I go through, and also before I go to sleep at nighttime, I open up a book just kind of to learn something new before I go to sleep. I mean, you want to kind of recharge, but I try to read. That is one of the greatest things. And I also try to watch a YouTube video on a different recipe to cook. So I'm always trying to learn how to cook better and learn something new from books.
Yeah, I'm always getting those reels about how to cook these little dishes because I'm actually vegetarian and I always see always get these vegan, vegetarian quick recipes. So yeah. The next one is question number 4. What's your most important lesson in life?
Most important lesson in life. Oh, that's a really good one. I think it's to kind of step out of your boundaries, step out of the box that maybe you have. If you could take a risk, take any type of risk, and just step out and make something of yourself. I mean, the risk you can take can really change your life. So be able to go and say yes to things and make risk.
Nice. All right. Question number 5. Can you name 2 or 3 transformational book recommendations or any other sort of artistic media for the listeners?
I would say, I've said this before, The Simple Path to Wealth is one amazing book to read. Another amazing book that I've told many people to read is Never Split the Difference. And that's a book about negotiations. And it's just a kind of eye-opening and learning about how to negotiate and create value through that. Those 2 books, I mean, can get you through a lot of life.
Nice. And then the last question number 6. What's 1 or 2 small things that listeners can do this week if they wanted to kind of follow in your footsteps, they were inspired about your awesome journey? What advice would you give them?
Well, I think number 1 would be start tracking your spending. Make a Google sheet, make a budget, start seeing where each and every one of your expenses is going.
Nice. Anything else they could do this week to get started?
I would start reading some books, or just even simple blog posts. Go to find Mr. Money Mustache, go to my blog and look up different ways to save money and open a brokerage account and put in some money into VTI. You can easily open up either Robinhood or Fidelity, and you can do some fractional shares or even Vanguard and put in $10. Make it automated.
So there you have it. So those, yeah, exactly. So if anyone's listening, as Steve mentioned, you could start small. You don't have to go all in and think, oh my gosh, I have to save this massive amount. No, you start small and it's a long game. So yeah, nice one, Steve. Thank you very much for answering the quick fire round. And so I suppose before we close off, was there any kind of plugs you wanted to send the listeners to, or how best to, if they wanted to contact you, is anything you wanted to mention?
Yeah, one of the best ways is to go to my website, thefrugalexpat.com. Another way is I'm also on Twitter and Instagram. I think my Twitter handle would be thefrugalexpat1, the number. Someone else had the one without the number 1. So go to the Frugal Expat 1 on Twitter and the Frugal Expat 1 on Instagram. I'm on there. I think my email address is on the website. So if you're looking to contact me, you can send me an email through my website. And I'm always open to hear opportunities and to sit down and chat with people.
And the other thing I was going to ask you about was football. You mentioned you were a soccer coach. Football we call it football back in UK.
Oh, I know.
That's my sport. Do you still play now? Are you still playing?
I have been asked to play some indoor with a couple of guys. So yeah, I'm trying to get my legs stretched out and ready to go and play a little bit.
Nice. Yeah. I'm trying to get back into it. And it's one of those sports when you're kind of like, well, my age, it's easy to get injuries. So we try to not play it as much.
I think I'm relatively similar to your age. A little bit closer to 40 than 30.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Steve. Well, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. And let's keep in touch.
All right, sounds good. Thank you for having me, Greg. It's been a joy.
No worries. Thanks, Steve. If you think this episode would help a friend, please don't hesitate to share it with them. The show notes can be found at freedombeforefi.substack.com. If you have a question or want to connect, feel free to send me an email at freedombeforefi@proton.me. That's freedombeforefi@proton.me. If you found this show useful and want to be notified of future episodes, you can follow us on Spotify or Apple via the show's main page or on whatever app you're using right now. And lastly, if you've just learned one good thing that will help you in your journey and you want to help us out here, please do leave a 5-star rating on your podcast player app. If you're using Apple Podcasts, you can even leave a nice review by scrolling to the bottom of the podcast page. That would help us out loads. So thank you very much for spending your valuable time with us today. I really hope you're able to learn a few things from our conversation with Steve. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to Steve or to myself by sending me an email. Have a fantastic day, and as always, practice gratitude, live life by your design, and do things that make you smile. You got this.